To another edition of cPanel Live. Our broadcast will begin soon. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of cPanel Live. Our broadcast will begin shortly. Welcome to the May edition of cPanel Live. I'm your host, Jason Nickerson, and today's broadcast is what you need to know about AlmaLinux 8 and cPanel. In this broadcast, we'll be having a roundtable discussion with members of the AlmaLinux community and cPanel. Today, we're broadcasting live on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, and we'll be taking your live questions in the second half of the broadcast. So let's get started and meet our panelists. All right, today we have some great guys with us from AlmaLinux and from cPanel. Longtime cPanel person is Ken Power. Ken is the head of product there at cPanel. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your VP position at cPanel and really what's happening with cPanel right now and what's going on with open source and AlmaLinux.
Sure. Thank you for that brief introduction, Jason. So as you mentioned, I'm Vice President of Product Development at cPanel. You call me a longtime person. I started in 2006. So yeah, definitely a longtime person here at cPanel. Excuse me. And as leader of the product development at cPanel, we rely heavily on open source for our products, all the way from the operating system up to the toolkits that we use in our user interface, and always looking for different ways that we can give back to those various communities, whether it's code, documentation, or people, whatever it is we can do to make those open source projects succeed.
Great. And from AlmaLinux, we have Jack Abopo, and I'm sorry if I tore your name up there, Jack. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your position? You're now the community manager there at AlmaLinux.
Yeah, so I'm the community manager here. A lot of herding cats. Actually, we have a really excellent team. Lots of people from all over the world doing lots of different things. And we put out our first release a couple of months ago, working on the next version. And, just here trying to be a catalyst, trying to make things happen, trying to keep things coordinated and contribute myself, whatever I can contribute.
Great. And now we have Jesse Asplund. And Jesse was with cPanel for a long time, and now he has a new position with our parent company, WebPros. And I believe Jesse is also part of the AlmaLinux board now. You want to tell us a little bit about that, Jesse?
Yeah, definitely. So similar to Ken, I'm a longtime person as well at cPanel, starting back in 2007. Have been involved with the customer-facing side of the organization throughout my tenure here. And similar to the sentiments Ken gave about our involvement in the open source community, if our product supports it, we also support it in technical support and supporting our customers utilizing the different open source projects we contribute and or sponsor. And further from that, I was asked to be part of the AlmaLinux board as add some representation for the hosting community in general, and really excited to be a part of that and helping shape our future on cPanel being supported on AlmaLinux.
Thank you, Jesse. And of course, I'm Jason Nickerson. I'm the host of cPanel Live. I'm also a longtime user of open source projects, and I've been involved in many of the open source content management systems that are out there. And I have a real strong passion for open source. So I'm really glad to have you guys with us today and to actually talk about this new project that's really come into light here in the last few months and solved many problems for many people. So first, I want to start with you, Jack. For people out there who are tuning in that maybe don't know what AlmaLinux is, why don't you give them a little bit of the history of how AlmaLinux started and what it is?
Yes. So as some people may know or some might not know, sometime last year, Red Hat decided that they were going to move CentOS away from, let's say, a stable release model to more of a rolling release, where it essentially became an early testing ground for stuff that's going to end up in Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So now, while that personally, I think that's great, and I think there's a lot to be said for that, and I think there was a lot that was misunderstood around what their intentions were. I think Red Hat's intentions were to kind of make it easier for collaborators to collaborate with what was once previously a walled garden. There was a lot of misunderstanding around that. Now that's great, but I think that for people that were relying on CentOS as a base for running their workloads and for running cPanel and other types of applications like that, obviously the rolling release is not useful for them. They need something stable. They need something that doesn't change actually as much as possible in order to maintain, long-term stability, reliability, just so that they can run their projects on top of that. And that's where we come in. So we saw the opportunity to fill that role. Of course, the project was started by members of the company AlmaLinux. And obviously, many people in the hosting space are very familiar with AlmaLinux. I won't get into that here, but they offer a few different products related to hosting and related to, managing your servers, long-term support, stuff like that. And, they saw the need for this. So basically, Igor Salitsky, who's the CEO, cut off a chunk of $1 million and said that, we're going to use this as an endowment for the foundation. We started a nonprofit foundation that runs the project, that governs the project. So it's a community project. It's governed by the community. It's run by the community. Contributions are coming in from the community. It's all done out in the open. And we basically have a drop-in replacement for CentOS. So if you were relying on it before, if wherever your hosting provider was providing it as an OS, our plan is to basically come in there and be a one-to-one drop-in replacement for that.
Great, yeah. And when I was looking at it, it was the AlmaLinux is actually a fork of a previous one, right?
So it's not really a fork. I mean, we had AlmaLinux had AlmaLinux OS and AlmaLinux OS Plus, which was, very similar to CentOS, but just essentially included lots of extras related to, certain verticals like the hosting industry, stuff like that. So basically with added tools. So, AlmaLinux has basically been building their own version of CentOS, if you want to call it that, for the last decade. And so, basically the tooling and the technology was there, the know-how was there. And you know, rightfully so, they decided, well, you know, it's easy for us to go ahead and open this up to everybody. And so what they essentially did now is created a new distribution, which is AlmaLinux, and it doesn't have all those extras that Cloud Linux provides, which you know, that's a discussion for another time, and I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. But you know, it's essentially its own OS, mirroring what CentOS was, and with a very vibrant community on top of it. So that's also one of the you know, big value adds here, is that we do have a great community, and there's lots to get involved in. It's a very lively place, and there's a lot of people that are, you know, devoting a lot of time into making this rock solid for everyone.
Right, and that's so important with open source. The open source communities, you know, we've seen so much growth in the last 20 years in open source, and open source is, you know, becoming a real catalyst in the movement, and getting communities and people together to rally around a common cause. And it's great that you guys got this together at the perfect time. So, Ken, cPanel announced support for AlmaLinux 8 the same week that it was released virtually. Why was it so vital at this moment in cPanel?
That's a really good question, Jason. There's a few reasons that come to mind. As Jack mentioned, Red Hat completely changed the model for CentOS from this stable distribution to this rolling release. Not only that, they brought the end of life date for CentOS 8 closer in time. So instead of it being supported for another 8 or 9 years, it reaches end of life at the end of 2021. So that was surprising to a lot of us, and that meant something needed to happen soon. So one of the first things we did, excuse me, one of the first things we did was reach out to Igor, among others, and ask about, you know, talk about what does this mean? What are ways forward? What are things that we can do? We also we're hearing the feedback from our customers that we were slow at adopting CentOS 8. We heard that, and we knew that with this big announcement that Red Hat made, that we needed to do something soon, something quick, if you will, so that we could bring some stability, that we could bring some confidence to what the future would be like, especially for shared hosting, which has such a huge install base on CentOS distros or versions of CentOS. So by us working with AlmaLinux early, us making that decision, and then having that day one support for AlmaLinux 8, that would give our customers the confidence they need to know, to make their plans on what they're going to do when they retire older versions or systems that are using older versions of CentOS. And like Jack said, since it's a drop-in replacement, you can take if you already were deployed on CentOS 8, you run a little utility and it converts you to AlmaLinux. It's super simple.
Great, and that brings me to Jesse. Because you've recently joined the board of AlmaLinux, and that really adds a lot to, you know, cPanel and Web Pros and the company. So you'll be helping to guide, and you'll know really what's going on in the future of projects. That's something, anytime that you're involved with using open source software, it's a great thing to try to get really involved in the community, so you can know firsthand of what changes are coming, and so you can really prepare for things. So is this your first position on an open source project, Jesse, or do you have a history with open source projects?
I mean, I've been involved in contributions and in various forms with open source projects in the past, but this will be my first in terms of operating on a board of an open source project like this. So I'm actually really excited. It's a lot of new things for me. But I felt like when I was asked, it was a good match because of the mission that AlmaLinux has, and the relationship that cPanel has with operating systems like CentOS or AlmaLinux, you know, or any other distribution in the future. And then, you know, given my role and what I've done over the years in terms of, you know, listening to customers and being involved with the community, it probably, and it definitely does give a lot of value to, you know, the rest of the board members and the mission behind AlmaLinux to have that voice and reason within there as well. So yeah, to answer your question, definitely the first in terms of this capacity, but open source isn't new to any of us, and we've been working with open source for a long time. So
yeah, that's fantastic, because the people that are involved in it that I'm seeing that are on the board, I know a lot of them. There are some people that, you know, used to be involved with cPanel, and it looks like you guys are stacking a really good board there. I can't wait to see what's going to be coming up. So going back to you, Jack, you know, it looks like the project's off to a real solid start. I've seen a lot of action on social this week, a lot of discussion going on. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the latest additions that you're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, we're working with some of the hyperscalers on getting on their platforms. We're working with Linode. Linode just you know, announced support for AlmaLinux as well, and there'll be more, you know, more to follow. Similar announcements with other providers as well. And you know, right now our main focus is you know, Red Hat just released RHEL 8.4. So we're working on that. We're working on our ARM build as well. So if anyone, you know, wants to run on ARM, that's also a possibility. We're working on other architectures for the future. And right now the push is really to kind of, you know, put out images for really any platform you can kind of imagine, so that if someone, you know, wants to spin something up, a container, you know, a server, whatever it is, they'll be able to do that in order to test, and then hopefully they can migrate from, you know, whatever their test environment is over to, you know, live deployment with minimal friction. So, you know, there's that. And then we're actually, a few people in the community started working on a project to try and have cPanel work with SE Linux. So they're trying to work on some policies for that, which is, you know, that's really exciting. You know, hopefully when we get that working, it'll provide a lot of additional security as well, which is something you can never have enough of. So, and again, that was just someone popped into our chat room one day and said, hey, I think, you know, I'm pretty good with SE Linux. I like cPanel. I want to try to make this happen. And, you know, we're supporting them, and we kind of ran with it.
All right. It looks like we have a question here from one of our viewers, from Anthony Lay, about the lifespan of Alma. And is there an easy way to migrate from Alma to CentOS, or is it a migration from cPanel server to cPanel server? Jack, do you want to take this? And
yeah, so the lifespan is going to be 10 years for the major release. So basically, you know, like we said, kind of like a drop-in for what CentOS had. So they had, you know, same sort of timeline for support for releases. There's an easy way to, I'm assuming he meant to convert from CentOS over to AlmaLinux. Yes, there is. We have, if you go to our website, which is almalinux.org, and then click on resources on the top, you can hit migration script, and there's a migration script. So if you're running CentOS 8 now, you could just run that script, and it'll convert everything over for you automatically. It's really, really, really low friction. We're also working on some enhancements for that script to include some modules as well to, you know, for different functionality. So if you're on GitHub and that's your thing, make sure you star the repository so you can follow the updates. And yeah, I mean, it's really super simple. There's not really much to say about it because it really is that simple.
That sounds great. That's, you know, just one click availability is really fantastic. Yeah. So we've got a question from LPO. In terms of the lifespan support per version, what is the support life for the edition? Is there an LTS?
Right. So by definition, the distro is sort of LTS. Right. So we're shooting for a 10-year lifespan for each major version. So you're talking about your 8s, your 9s. That being said, if anyone wants commercial support, Cloud Linux announced that they'll be offering commercial support for the distro, and there's been talk about some other providers providing commercial support as well. So that's definitely an option if you're looking for it. If you want to just have that extra confidence to know that someone's there behind you, that's also an option as well.
All right. Anthony has another question. What about CentOS 7?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's a little bit more difficult. It depends on, what your so let me start by saying this. The migration script works from any 8 to AlmaLinux 8. So if you're running, any number of enterprise Linux distributions that are version 8 or higher, we'll be able to handle that. For 7, it's a little bit more difficult because there are more pieces in play there. And so you need to be a little bit careful about, specifically around just how much customization you've done to your server. We don't support it out of the box, but there have been people that have done it, and we're certainly looking at putting together a similar script that'll go from 7. It's a lot more work. But that being said, if you're interested in finding out more about that or asking questions or trying to get some help, you can join us on chat.almalinux.org, and then just pop into the channel, introduce yourself, and just ask away, and you can get some good information there.
Right. And for more information about AlmaLinux, you can visit almalinux.org. And if you're looking to increase your offerings with cPanel, you can visit our store.cpanel.net. And our next question is from Brian Singer. Do you think there will be any issues with config server?
The firewall?
Yeah, config server offers a few different products, but in general, I don't think most of the products that work with cPanel have a OS dependence, in terms of you may not work in largely different operating systems, but since AlmaLinux is a drop-in replacement, it should have the support, but it's probably best to figure out if config server actually supports it.
Generally, the incompatibilities we found is if something supports CentOS 8, it should work with AlmaLinux 8. As the incompatibilities we found is when the application is checking specifically for the name of the distro, and if it sees AlmaLinux, it may bail out saying it's not compatible. But otherwise, if it supports CentOS 8 in general, it should work just the same on AlmaLinux 8.
Okay, and we have a we usually give out a questions at cPanel email for the rebroadcast of this, but someone's already asking us questions via email. So we have a question here: are cPanel compatible between different versions of Linux? Can you migrate cPanel users from one distribution to another? Ken, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Yes, you can migrate a cPanel user from, say, CentOS 5 onto a CentOS 8 system. Generally, there's nothing OS specific about the cPanel user, about its account. Sure, their websites might rely upon some functionality that you'll have to make sure is installed, but the accounts themselves are not OS dependent.
Right.
And to expand on that, the CentOS or EL8 migration support over to AlmaLinux also supports if you're running cPanel on it already as well. So you can convert to AlmaLinux with cPanel running on it with existing users.
All right, and I got a few more questions for you, Jack. What's the size of the team now, of the AlmaLinux team?
Yeah, so the core team, there's quite a few people. I would say, the central core is probably close to 15 people. That's made up mainly of community people. Then there are people from within Cloud Linux that are involved as well. So on that end, there's about another probably a team of comparable size, doing things related to packaging, the build system, QA, all those types of things. So yeah, I mean that's probably it. And then it's it's really growing every day because we have people joining the community every day, and just people, show up on the chat, self-introduce, and like, hey, I'm interested in this, and then they go off into one of the rooms and start working and collaborating with other people. So yeah, it's growing every day. I mean, we have a good core, and we have a great crew. And if anyone's interested, I definitely invite everyone to stop by, chat.almalinux.org and just get involved.
And as far as the open source project itself, is it a volunteer project, or how is the project set up? I think you explained a little bit, but can you define, do you have roles for volunteers and then paid roles within the company, the base company, or how is that running?
Yes. So right now, Cloud Linux founded the project with $1 million endowment. So there are employees from within Cloud Linux that, are obviously paid to work on the project. So that's a given. Then we have other corporate sponsors and partners whom we're collaborating with, and they're also involved as well. And then so it's they work for whatever company they work for, and they're devoting their time to helping the project become what it is. Much like Jesse's involvement with the board, clearly he doesn't work for Cloud Linux, he doesn't work for AlmaLinux, he just works for cPanel, and cPanel is part of our community, and they want to make sure that AlmaLinux is the best distribution that it can be. So we have people like that, and then we also have just volunteers from all over the community that do what they do because they love being involved in open source.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to do it. Yeah, because all volunteers is sometimes it's a great thing, but sometimes that does take a long time to get things done with people just volunteering their time. So I'm glad to hear that there's a serious team behind it as well. So moving on to our next question from our attendees is, with security updates, what is the time scale of security patches making their way into AlmaLinux from the Cloud Linux distribution?
Yes, so actually the security updates and things like that, we are trying to basically track whatever Red Hat releases within a day or two. Oftentimes, we will know ahead about a security vulnerability because we're on the disclosure list, so we will have that patched and taken care of as well, or sometimes we may even work together with people at Red Hat or some other distribution in order to prepare that specific fix. And then we're hoping to track, probably within a day or two, depending on how major of an update it is, behind whatever Red Hat puts out. So fairly closely, and that goes for both Alma and probably for Cloud Linux. I don't want to speak for them, but I know that in general they've always been pretty timely with that type of stuff. So it's trying to be as close as possible to when the upstream stuff is released.
Okay, we're getting close to our 30-minute mark here, so we're going to take a few more questions and then have some closing thoughts from our panelists. So the next question is, does AlmaLinux still rely upon the same kernel, or is it using an adjusted version of the Cloud Linux kernel?
It's not using a version of the Cloud Linux kernel at all, actually. It's using the stock, like Enterprise 8, whatever's in RHEL. That's what we're putting out there.
Alrighty, Michael Carter asks, if my VPS is currently provided by a hosting company, but my cPanel licenses are direct with cPanel for their support, will cPanel be able to help with the migration from 7.9 over to Alma? I would say that would be Ken or Jesse.
Jesse?
Yeah. So basically how we operate with our support is if you have an active license with with a cPanel license in general, you basically are eligible for support with us. We generally encourage customers who buy their license from distributors or partners to use them as a first line of support, and then escalate from there. But honestly, the migration to AlmaLinux is one script that you run and it migrates it over, and there's not any further configuration that's needed afterwards. So it's actually a rather simple process to do it. But if there's issues, we're more than happy to help.
And Anthony asked, are we able to hire the team to get from CentOS 7 to CentOS 8 migrated Alma 8? That would, I guess, be for Jack.
You can certainly reach out to us, and we can try to figure out if there's some arrangement that works. That would probably be something that Cloud Linux takes care of on their side, not something that's coming from AlmaLinux itself. Again, unless you wanted to work with the community to kind of figure out some kind of plan, we're happy to do that. But if you're looking to do something paid, then you're probably looking at working with Cloud Linux to do that.
All right, and we have a few more here, so let's take those real quickly. Jason Hall asks, what is the plan for keeping package systems like Perl up to date in the 10-year lifespan? Are you keeping the RH model of 10-plus-year-old versions? What about loading more current versions?
Yes, so complicated question. In general, we are trying to track with whatever Red Hat does, because obviously that's what our promise is that we're offering the same, same stability and really, the same drop-in replacement in essence. So in general, yes, there has been talk about certain SIGs, which are special interest groups, related to certain things like this, modular packages, packages that manage other packages, which sometimes get outdated, to be able to set up, maybe like a separate like SIG specific repository where stuff like that is updated for people that need it. So again, the best way to facilitate that is, again, join us on our chat.almalinux.org, and then just talk to your peers and let's see what we can make happen.
Okay, Anthony, Cloud Linux likes money. All right, it's a statement I think many people do. So what distribution license model does Alma use? Per server, for example, can you purchase multiple licenses, for example, blocks of 5?
Yeah, so there are no licenses. AlmaLinux is totally free and will forever be free. There's no specific license there. It's not tied to Cloud Linux like that. Cloud Linux is just one of the supporters of the project, but there's no license to download. You can download it 1,000 times and install it 1,000 times if you want, and it's totally free.
Free and an open source project. So let's conclude the questions there, and let's get some final thoughts. So Ken, why don't you share with us some final thoughts about AlmaLinux and the project and cPanel moving forward?
Sure. So one thing that is really great about working with and on AlmaLinux is just how quickly we were able to get to a state of a stable, supported release, not just the distro, but also the cPanel product supporting it. And as I mentioned earlier, there's such a huge investment in the web hosting industry on CentOS. So getting a replacement for CentOS 8 in place in such a short time frame is very impressive. And that's really where we have a lot of our attention focused, is on continuing that stable release platform on now AlmaLinux and making it a huge focus of our development efforts.
Thank you, Ken. And Jack?
Yeah, I think we're here. We're putting a lot of effort into this to make this something that everyone around the world can use for a very long time, supported by a vibrant community of contributors. We're glad to be working with cPanel. Obviously, cPanel has a very long history of excellence within the community, and it has its reputation not for nothing. And we're definitely glad to be working together, and I foresee us working together really for a very long time, providing the best possible user experience. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, right? Is providing the best experience to the end users, to, let's say, the customers, right? Whoever that is. So we're glad to be working with Ken, with Jesse, really with everyone there at cPanel to make that a reality.
And Jesse, your final thoughts, and can you give us a little breakdown of what you think you're going to be doing with the board there at AlmaLinux?
Yeah, sure. So I'll echo Ken and Jack's sentiments on, collaboration together. We've had a long history even before AlmaLinux with Cloud Linux and some of the team that are involved on the board now. So I'm really hopeful and excited about what's to come and what we're going to deliver for the hosting community and beyond that. And moving from here, we're kind of still defining what things look like on the board and how the involvement will be, but the discussions we've had and some of the planning we've had so far has been very promising, and I can't relay enough how excited I am to be a part of this to help it grow and be successful.
Great. Well, I want to thank all of our panelists today and thank everyone for attending today's broadcast. For more information on AlmaLinux, you can visit almalinux.org. And don't forget to visit store.cpanel.net for more information on our products and partnerships. And again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.